It's my phone, man. Good afternoon, Guyana, and thank you once again for joining us for an update on the Recount Watch. Today, my guest is attorney at law and a candidate for the People's Progressive Party Civic, Mr. Sanjeev Datadin. Thank you for joining us again this afternoon, Mr. Datadin, and how are you doing?
Good afternoon, Hugh. Good afternoon to all your viewers. I'm doing fine. Quiet day so far.
Okay, we have a few points that we want to raise that should be able to bring clarity for our viewers here in Guyana and for those who may be watching from the diaspora, who may also need some amount of clarity on some of the issues coming out of different sources. We have some issues that are very topical that we believe that we need to continue to reinforce because it's very pertinent that we move together along a solid line and to understand exactly what is unfolding at the convention center with regards to the recount process. As you know, Sanjeev, one of the topical issues here is slothfulness in the recount process. And I would like your view on the slothfulness and how we can actually speed up the process. There were some recommendations being made for additional counting stations, so I'll let you go from here.
Well, the first thing, is this. We've set 25 days to have this done. There are 2,300 plus votes, ballot boxes to count. However, we have had, as has been said, and if you ever done at the Artichoke Convention Center, really only about 3 hours is spent counting ballots. The rest of the time is spent with objections that are frivolous, writing up these objections on observation sheets. So it's all a delay. It's all a systemic delay that the APNU agents and representatives are doing. So if we could realize that these objections that are being made really have no place at this stage. This is a recount. This is not an audit. And they should not be allowed or tolerated. There is no point in us exercising, wasting time on that because GCOM can't do anything about it. The line that APNU keeps saying, and you see from their representative, APNU AFC, keeps saying is GCOM must investigate. GCOM can't investigate. GCOM has to adjudicate, if anything at all. But this is not something that they can adjudicate on. They can't adjudicate on this issue. Only a court could do it. But GCOM can't investigate to present. I mean, you can't be a judge in your own cause. GCOM has an interest to serve here. But the first thing is we're doing at about 50, 55 boxes a day. We need to move faster than that to meet the deadline. We need to move faster than that is recognized by GCOM. Since Wednesday or Wednesday, they've identified that 6 more stations should be in place. We're awaiting the COVID task force. But who are the people on this COVID task force? It's Nagamutu, it's Harmon, it's Valda Lawrence. They have no interest in moving with any alacrity. They have no interest in moving this process forward. And how could we, GCOM, be subservient to an arm of the coalition who are deliberately trying to delay things? And then GCOM is asking them for permission. GCOM has identified 6 more stations could be done. There is accommodation possible. All the parties have agreed to this. The commission has agreed to it. Why would the COVID task force take so long to approve something that is obvious? If we have those 6 more tasks, stations, were to allow that they happen, GCOM is immediately ready to do that. And we are then likely to be on pace to finish within the 25 days we could do it.
Okay.
But we have to stop the frivolous things. We have to actually deal with what it is, and the nation is waiting.
Yes, and following on from that, how would you respond to the Attorney General's statements this morning, where he did say that the law does not provide for a declaration that would lead towards the swearing in of a president following the conclusion of a recount. It seems to me
Well,
as if there's an amount of confusion.
he
How do you respond to that?
well, he's playing fast and loose with the truth as he always. He's being fast and loose with the truth as he always is. He said 33 was not a majority of 65. This argument is on that scale. It's of that magnitude. It really is not a representation of the law. Whether a recount has happened in Guyana since 1992 to now, whether there is a precedent for it, of course there's no precedent. We haven't had the need. Hadn't had an elections commission that was acting in such a perverse manner before. So unreasonable, and we didn't have a government in place that when they went to an election and lost wouldn't leave office. So no, we've not had this situation before. But the Representation of the People's Act provides for a recount. It provides that when the recount is done, they produce, which they are producing, statement of recount, not statement of polls, statement of recount. Those statement of recount replace the statement of polls, and the tabulation of same is what the chief elections officer must act upon in preparing his report that goes to the commission. The commission must then receive that report and present it, decide whether to accept or not, to accept it, whether there's a reason. But the GCOM doesn't really have an authority whether to accept it or not. GCOM has to find a reason why not to accept it. So there must be a positive reason why not to. In the absence of any, then it is declared as the results. This is covered very clearly.
Yes.
Sections 84 and section 90 of the Representation of the People's Act. Perhaps Mr. Williams has not read the legislation, or he has not understood what he has read. But the position is very simple. It is very clear. As long as a recount is undertaken by GCOM, the SORs, the statement of recount, are then, once they're tabulated, they're being done and they're being tabulated at the same time by GCOM. That tabulation is then to what GCOM will consider in the CEO's report. That must go to them for them to do the declaration of the result. So for him to say that this has nothing to do with declaring a result, it's nonsensical, utterly nonsensical.
Yes, because we've been asking from our end, the People's Progressive Party, Civic's end, that Mingo's declaration be discarded. Here today, he is saying that we have to go back to the declarations made previously, the 10 declarations, including the fraudulent declarations of Mingo, to be used to get the new government sworn in. So I think that's a bit irresponsible of the Attorney General, and I'm happy that you are actually bringing much clarity to these comments made by him, because he still holds an office. People will still listen to him. So I'm happy that you're here to actually bring the kind of clarity and truth that needs to be disseminated within Guyana, so that people could really understand what to expect, because some people seem to still be a bit uncertain as to what this process should bring about. Well,
the thing about it is this: GCOM is a public body. In law, they must act reasonably. Now, there is a principle in law, going into it in too great detail, but it's known as Wensbury reasonableness. This is a court of Wensbury Corporation against the Associated Picture Houses. What it said is every public body, when you make a decision, you must act in a reasonable manner. You just mustn't be willy-nilly. You mustn't take irrelevant things into consideration. And more importantly, you must not ignore relevant considerations. Now, given the fact that over the past week and a bit, we have seen box after box, day after day, where Mr. Mingo's spreadsheet is a fabrication. It is a fantasy. The numbers there have no basis in reality. They were invented. How is it possible that GCOM, as a public body to exercise their discretion in a reasonable manner, can decide to continue with Mingo's declaration? They must see this is not now speculative. This is clear. Every day, more and more boxes come out that where Mingo used the spreadsheet, he was lying when he said those were the numbers. And when you look at the statement of polls that the PPP received on election day from GCOM, it matches those same figures. So GCOM can't look at that in totality and say, well, oh, we will still decide that Mingo's figures. And no attorney general worth his salt can, in the face of seeing a public institution faced with such circumstances, encourage that public institution to adopt a course or to make a decision that would pervert the course of justice.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that is pretty clear and concise. The other issue I want you to respond to is the fact that earlier today, I'm not sure if the meeting is concluded, but we understand that members from the APNU met with GCOM, the commission, to deal with irregularities that came out of that, uplifted commerce, obviously, coming out of what they claim to be a very sketchy elections. How do you respond to the procedures being followed, the protocols being followed, and should such a meeting be held in the context of what we are facing?
Well, I was a little astonished that GCOM would at this stage decide to meet APNU without meeting all the other parties at the same time. It would be, why would something like that be done? It is indeed unorthodox that you would meet with one political party at this stage. Now, I have also seen, and I think the world has seen on social media, and if you were there, you would have seen that the representatives of APNU simply walked in. They didn't go to the COVID checkpoint. There's a tent, there's a setup there about taking the temperature, all of that. They didn't do any of that. They drove in, they walked in, and they went to a meeting. The meeting is still going on as of 3:45 when I checked on it, and that is still going on. But the thing is, why would they be there meeting? And they have raised all their observations. They provided no proof for any of it. They stand at podiums. Cathy Hughes is standing at a podium, and there are others who are posting on Facebook about dead people voting, about there being people who have migrated, but they've provided no proof at all for these things. Mm-hmm. And they're saying that GCOM was going to investigate. GCOM is not an investigative arm of APNU and should not stoop to being named as that. They are not the investigative arm of APNU. They are a public body with specific functions to discharge, and their only function is to administer the elections, and that is count the ballots. They have to open those ballot boxes in the presence of all and count them. Why would it be seen that they would want to raise these concerns now with GCOM? But GCOM should invite the opposition and all the other parties that participated, yes, and have every one of them there and meet so that it could be heard what is being said. So that the small parties, I mean, I know they don't like to be referred to as small parties, but the new parties, if we say that, the new parties should hear what is being said too. And yeah, I think it's unorthodox, and it is not a good sign. It is not a good sign when things like that go on in the full face of the media and in full view of everyone. It's not being concealed. Sends the wrong message.
Yes, thank you very much. The other matter I want to get your response for is earlier today, as you're aware, we had a small protest in front of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in advocate for the Carter Center to be allowed entry into Guyana, consistent with what they would have done over the last several elections, starting with 1992, where they led the transition towards democracy. They've been a very integral partner for us in championing democracy. They were very important for Guyana throughout the last 2 decades plus, and now this administration is saying that they're uninvited.
Well, I mean, we all know the Carter Center was instrumental in Guyana returning to democracy in 1992. They have been here through every election since. They have been a very integral part in advising our elections commission on various things, legislation, procedures. We've received enormous assistance from them. They were here, they were observing, they were witnessing too, speaking out for what witnessing. Now, they are accredited observers, and that accreditation remains until the electoral process is complete. And it's not complete until we have a declaration and a government sworn in. But now we have legislation in this country where we have an act that deals with foreign observers for an election, because it's been part of our history and our heritage now that this is required. And we have legislation to govern it. And one of the things you can't do when an observer is appointed for an election is you can't interfere with them. It's a criminal offense. You can't prevent them from carrying out their duties, and it is a criminal offense if you interfere with that. Now, I know that the COVID task force has a duty to do what they have to do. But if the Carter Center is going to agree with the protocols, going to obey with the protocols, and they're legitimately entitled to be here safely in accordance with the law, how can you prevent them? To prevent them is to breach that act. It is to interfere with the legislation, and that's a criminal offense. So, whether proceedings are going to be filed or criminal proceedings are going to be filed, I'm not hopeful that the police or the DPP is going to do anything along the right lines. But we have to bear in mind that there is recourse to the law, and they should not be doing that. And that is what it should be for. Now, that's what the law is for. It's to protect that right. Now, the second thing about those people being arrested, I have to say that when the arrests were made, I'm one of the attorneys that was involved, and they were taken to Brick Dam. As it stands right now, it appears that what will happen is the police have indicated that they have all been released on a recognizance, which is bail essentially, after report. But the police thinking is that charges are going to be laid under the orders that were made under the public health ordinance, that they're going to be charged for breaching. But here's the problem. They can't lawfully charge anyone under that legislation, because there's been no COVID-19 has not been declared an infectious disease under the act. The powers that supposedly should have been exercised by the president have been exercised by a minister. So the validity of those orders are of great question, and we're certainly going to ventilate those things in the court. But the right to protest can't be removed. We haven't suspended the Constitution. We haven't done any of those sorts of things. We've passed legislation. They had to be, if you're in public, you had to observe a certain distance, social distancing. From what I saw and from what I witnessed, those people who were there holding placards were not noisy, they were peaceful, and they were not less than 6 feet apart. So they had obeyed the rules. So what was the reason for you to interfere with what they were doing? It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that the police force engaged in that, but we are trying to balance so many things at the same time.
Yes, thank you very much. The other question I want you to give your views on before we wrap up, because I think we're just past our 50 minutes timeline, is the fact that there's a dossier out there filed, well, a lobbyist firm hired by the APNU AFC. I think Joe Harmon and along with David Patterson, are the two signatories to that document, where they did mention, among other things, that the elections was free, fair, and credible. And now the narrative has moved from a free, fair, and credible election day, March 2nd, to an election process that was bungled. A lot of persons who migrated happened to vote, persons who dead, who are now deceased, somehow managed to vote. We have done our best to ensure that we bring much clarity to that. How do you see this playing out for the APNU FC, and how should GCOM respond to such allegations made by APNU FC? Because I'm sure these are some of the matters they would have raised today at the meeting with the commission.
Well, the first thing they said, Cathy used yesterday, is they didn't have a claims and objection period. That was a lie. And then she alleged, well, it's because of the mask you didn't hear her say that. There was a 42-day period, which I believe was extended by 7 more days. So there was that was a lie. She then said that all their complaints are written in the poll books, and the poll books are missing, and that's why they're not showing up. You see, that's also a lie, because all of the poll books are available, and all of the poll books are being used and utilized and are available to GCOM. What she was misled by was, initially on the first day, the poll books for Region 1 were left with the returning officer in Region 1. And she might have gotten carried away by the fact that they said, well, the poll books for Region 1 are not available. But they were put on a plane subsequently and flown down to Georgia, and they are now in the possession of GCOM. They were with GCOM's official in Region 1. So all the poll books are there, and none of the poll books thus far have any record there from an APNU agent that says that any such thing took place. She said they made the objection. They never made the objection. They're making it up. She said they had this information all along, but she won't say how many. Well, if you had it all along, you don't need for the boxes to be open and counted. You could say this is your list of people, and these are all your people that you have got to do.
Yes.
That you've got a problem with, and these are the things that you have to provide evidence of. They've provided no evidence of it, none whatsoever. They talk about birth certificates, they flash them on social media, they haven't produced anything. They talk about travel records, they haven't produced anything. And you have to realize, with travel records, you would have people's passport numbers on them. The official list of electors have people's ID numbers on them. So how are you corresponding these two things? But be that as it may, those objections are frivolous and without merit, and the lies that are being peddled, nothing surprises me anymore. Every day when you think this is the worst possible lie they can, someone of APNU AFC people find a mic, and I don't know if a mic to them is like a bullfight and a matador waving a sign that says lie, because that's what they're doing. Every time they see a mic, they lie. And they then come up with the lies, but it's catching up because everybody's telling their own lies, so it doesn't make sense anymore. Now, yes, about spending 96 million, nearly $100 million to hire lobbyists, the two parties did. One of the very concerning things about that is paragraph 6 or 7 on that agreement says that it was to introduce them to American companies for infrastructure projects in Guyana. That is illegal. That is blatantly illegal. The rest of it is illegal because no political party can hire an agent to look into the government's interest. That's a little bit more complicated law, but it is illegal. But it is definitely easy illegality that you are soliciting suitable companies to invest in Guyana, and you have an agent to do that. So the Procurement Commission doesn't matter, Parliament doesn't matter, presumably Cabinet is irrelevant. So how could you go about doing this? This is the most blatant I have ever seen. Someone would put that into a contract and put it in writing and file it with a US government agency so the whole world sees it. This is no shame whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjeev Datadin, for your insightful comments in responding to a lot of the issues that are out there and bringing much clarity and depth, must say, to most of the issues or all of the issues. We look forward to your usual contribution as we continue with our Recount Watch. Thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you very much to the people of Guyana and those of you who are listening.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much, Todd.
Join us again tomorrow, same time.
Yes.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Yes. You be safe, and may God be with you. Take good care,
You
bro.
too, bro. Take it easy.